Whitey Bulger's defense team begins its case today. It's not yet known if the reputed mobster will testify, but we do know Bulger likes to talk about his past. Bill Whitaker shows us how one man recently convinced Bulger to share some of his secrets.
So, Michael, you're the chronicler, the historian of Alcatraz.
Yeah, I've spent about 20 years basically doing interviews with various inmates and officers.
Michael Esslinger has written two books about the most notorious prison in American history. Shrouded in fog and mystery, a little more than a mile off San Francisco, Alcatraz housed a who's who of infamous criminals: Al Capone, Mickey Cohen. Whitey Bulger was out here.
He was, actually. He arrived basically in November of 1959, and he stayed here until April of 1962.
The alleged crime boss, now on trial in Boston for 19 grisly murders, was shipped off to the Rock after trying to escape from the federal prison in Atlanta, where he was serving time for bank robbery. He refused to snitch on the guard who helped him.
He wouldn't give up who that person was.
2 years ago, Esslinger wrote to Bulger asking him to share his memories of Alcatraz. By then, Bulger was back in jail, facing 19 counts of murder. His response was more than Esslinger had hoped.
This represents maybe 10 to 20% of the correspondence.
Really?
I probably have well over 1,000 pages. I came over to Alcatraz on the Warden Johnston boat and was bolted in for security purposes. I remember it all so well.
So this main corridor, it's called Broadway?
This is Broadway. This was the first stop for inmates arriving on Alcatraz.
So Whitey would have been brought to a cell here?
This is it. This was his first cell on Alcatraz, C-145.
While I didn't know some of the early residents like Al Capone, I have a good idea of what thoughts he had while serving time on Alcatraz. We read from the same library, we worked on the same jobs, and we were counted by some of the same guards. We are all part of a unique band of brothers.
This was actually the Industries building. Bulger started working here in December of 1960.
And what did he do here?
Well, he worked in the laundry.
It's empty today, but when Bulger was here, this room was filled with massive washing machines and men cleaning sheets, towels, even the Navy's shirts, which were laundered by the inmates.
This is the recreation yard. This was kind of a coveted area for the inmates. Bulger spent a lot of time in here.
This almost looks like Roman ruins or something.
Yeah.
And so Whitey would just stand up here and look at the world?
This was it. This was, one of the places that he said was most special to him.
I'd stand there and look out at the sailboats on the bay and at the Golden Gate Bridge. It was such a wonderful full view of the bay from Alcatraz. It was the best view from any prison in the world.
His sentence served, Bulger returned to Boston in 1965, where he allegedly worked his way to the top of the notorious Winter Hill Gang. During the 70s and 80s, prosecutors say he committed most of the 19 murders for which he is now on trial. Tipped off about a pending indictment in 1995, he disappeared with his girlfriend, Catherine Gregg, and dropped out of sight for more than 16 years.
Living on the run with Catherine in Santa Monica was like a 16-year honeymoon. They were the happiest years of my life. We never really looked over our shoulders. Our attitude was that we were going to live a normal life. If we were captured, then so be it. Until then, we were not going to live in a state of anxiety.
So tell me about those years in Santa Monica.
This guy knew how to be a ghost. Here he was, number 2 on the FBI's most wanted list, second only to Osama bin Laden, and basically, living right under their noses.
And Catherine?
One of the things that I know better than anybody is that that man loved that woman more than life itself.
But love wasn't enough to save her. Last June, as Bulger awaited his trial, Gregg was sentenced to 8 years in prison for helping him evade authorities. What about his time now in prison?
Jim Bulger does not see himself getting out of prison. I think that he recognizes that this is how he'll spend his last days. But all in all, this is my world now, and going to shut down all my feelings that I can. There is something to the expression dead man walking.
So we're walking in Whitey's footsteps.
We are, I guess, in a sense, yes.
Esslinger's goal was to get a glimpse of Bulger's life on Alcatraz, but he's left trying to reconcile the eloquent, likable man in his letters with the brutal killer depicted in court testimony. What did he say that he wanted on his tombstone?
If I could choose my epitaph on my tombstone, it would be, I'd rather be in Alcatraz 1428 AZ. All that remains on Alcatraz today are our ghosts.
For CBS This Morning, I'm Bill Whitaker in San Francisco.
Nice piece.
It'll be very interesting to see if he takes a stand, but I keep thinking about the victims' families who are watching
Always.
these pieces of Whitey Bulger going, okay, there's another side too.
Yeah, and how gruesome those killings were.
Yes.